Hey everyone, Ben and Greg from Solution Focused Possibilities here. Um, this week we wanted to look at, what do we do when a client of ours is adamant that the problems in their life are due to somebody else's actions. Okay, so they're absolutely adamant that their life would be better if only that other person would change X, Y, or Z. Yeah. And this can be frustrating as practitioners because we want our clients to maybe take responsibility, for what they can control in their lives, and we want to see them progress and do well. And so it can be frustrating for us as well when the client is just absolutely stuck on criticizing and blaming someone else for their problems, and it's not them that needs to change, it's this other person. So what do we do in those situations? What do we do in those scenarios? This is something that crops up routinely in supervision, and it's something that I came across again recently when reading the book Interviewing for Solutions by Peter de Jong and Insoo Kim Berg as well. And they speak about how the temptation for a lot of professionals in other fields can be to want to educate the client or challenge the client to say, you know what, blaming someone else isn't going to help you in the long term. You need to take responsibility for yourself. But of course, in solution focused work, that doesn't fit really with our principles and with our mindset, because we believe that the client is the expert on their own life, and we believe in leading from one step behind, those sort of ideas. So how on earth do we navigate this from a solution focused perspective? If we're not going to challenge the client, if we're not going to educate them, what do we do? And actually, in the words of Peter and Insoo, they talk about respecting the client's perception of the situation, and at the same time gently shifting the focus towards how they can bring about some positive changes. So that's what we're going to look at a little bit today, is how can you respect the client's perception that maybe all of their problems are linked to someone else, whilst also gently inviting a shift in perspective and some positive change. Helpfully, there was a short transcript included in this book, Interviewing for Solutions. So I'm just going to put that up on the screen for you as an example. And then once we've had a look at this, I'll hand over to Greg to share his thoughts as well. Okay, here we go. So this is a session that Insoo was doing with a client called Alice. And quite early on in the session, we get this from Alice. So Alice says, I sure hope there is hope for my son. He has never been what you would call a motivated child, but he has been worse lately. He won't come home on time. He won't do anything to help around the house. Now skipping school is all he does. Okay. So we've got this scenario of, my son is the problem. He's the one who won't do what he's supposed to. He won't come home on time, won't help around the house, just skip school. Okay. So the problems are firmly linked with this other person, located with this other person. Now, rather than jumping in and challenging and saying, well, forget about your son, what are you doing, or what could you do, or that sort of thing, Insoo's going to ask a question that respects that perception and also invites some change. So I can see that you have a very serious problem on your hands. And I wonder, what do you suppose needs to happen so that your son will be a little bit easier to live with? So we've got both acknowledgement. I can see that you've got a very serious problem on your hands, and we've got possibility. Well, I wonder what you suppose needs to happen. And that word suppose is quite critical, I think. And Greg will talk about that a little bit more, and you'll see it again as well. Alice's answer: he has to go to school first. I keep telling him that he won't get anywhere in life without an education. Again, we're still focused on the son. This is still about the son needs to do X, Y, and Z. So Insoo asks another question. That's a big one. I don't know how he is going to do that, but suppose, there's that word suppose again, just suppose that somehow he goes to school and stays in school. if that were to happen, what would your son be saying about how you are different with him now? Okay, so we've got more acknowledgement. Oh, that's a big one. And then we've got this gentle question, which shifts the focus slightly towards what Alice herself would be doing differently. Okay, and the answer, he wants me to not nag him so much. That's what he probably would say. Not nagging him and maybe even talking to him nice. Okay. And so we've gone from this position of, the problem is all lies with my son, and my son needs to do X, Y, and Z. And a couple of questions later, we've got to something that Alice herself might be doing differently. In this scenario, maybe even talking to him nice. Okay. Like I say, that's from the book Interviewing for Solutions, pages 60 to 62, if you want to go and have a look at that yourselves. And you can see how Insoo is both respecting the client's perception and also inviting a shift in focus through her questions. So there's one example. I'll just hand over to Greg to talk about his views on it as well.
Cheers for that, Ben. So yeah, as I'm listening to you talk about it, Ben, there's a couple of things that stand out. So there's this idea of kind of the assumptions that we hold and the point of view we take when we're talking with someone, and then there's kind of the structural questions and things that we do when we're asking things. So reading through that first statement, you could read that as, oh, here's a parent coming in to complain about their child, right? Like obviously they're not happy, I hope there's hope for him, but he's never been motivated. He's worse. He's not coming on time. He's not helping around the house. He's skipping school. So you could view that parent as, complaining about their kid, which isn't usually helpful. As you say, that tends to lead to that frustration. But then you hear that the response to that question that Insoo asks, and the response is saying, I keep telling him he won't get anywhere in life without an education. So now that shifts it gives us an opportunity to shift our perspective, basically, and say, this is a parent who wants their child to get somewhere in life. And that's why they're so frustrated. It's not because they're blaming their child. They want the best for their child, which is why they're so frustrated. And actually, if we keep that in mind, that this is someone that wants the best for their child, that comes through, I think, in our questions and in the kind of how genuine we are when we ask our questions. So, and one of the things that you can then see is that shift then, because in a sense, the questions are inviting them to sort of get in touch with that a bit more, which is what I think Insoo's second question does. And it's no different from, I've had a very similar, I know that book is, what year was that book? It was probably late 90s, mid 90s or 2000.
It's gonna be now. I'll have a look.
Have a look. But it's plenty, I would say probably a good 20 plus years old. But the problems are the same, because I'm working with a family now where it's a very similar thing. And they want their child in school, they want them to be listening, they want them to be doing what they're told. And of course that would make a difference. That would make a massive difference to any parent if you just said, of course my child's going to do what I'm asking them to do. I think the hard part is saying, well, we can't just make that happen. So I think that's the beauty of what Insoo does here, and the way we ask our questions now is very similar. So by holding that stance of, this parent wants what's best for their child, they're not just here to complain to me. There's that sense of acknowledgement. They're like, wow, that sounds really, really frustrating. This is something I've used in my session about, it sounds like it's really difficult, really frustrating for you to be wanting this for them, and yet kind of coming across what's happening now. And they'll say, well, yeah, of course it is. And then being able to bridge that gap to that land of possibility that Ben was talking about. We don't want to set them up with false hope. So to say, okay, we're going to get them there, they're going to go to school, they're going to do everything you ask of them, because that's not realistic. So that's this key thing in what Insoo says second is, I don't know how he's going to do that. I don't know how this is going to happen. I don't know if it'll happen, but let's just say, for the sake of this conversation, that your son did go to school and stayed in school. And that can happen in terms of the sessions that I've had. That can happen in any context. So you can always just say, let's presume it did. Like, we can't guarantee it. We can't guarantee everything's just going to change and he's going to do everything you want him to do. But let's just say it did. What would be the first sign from them? What would be the first thing you'd notice if they did do that, that would tell you things are moving in the right direction? And then there's a response, and then from the parent that we want to hear about. We're going to be curious about to say, and how would you then respond to them, say when they came home, or when you saw them the next morning, or whenever it might be. But that then allows us to bounce back to the parent or the person that we're talking with. So the key things there are the acknowledgement, how we're viewing the person we're talking with.
Yeah.
And going with the conversation, as you said, Ben, not kind of needing them to understand, but just allowing them to say, okay, no, I believe you. And looking then for those other questions.
Yeah.
Sorry, Ben, carry on.
Yeah, no, it's interesting, isn't it? It's interesting stuff. It makes me think of what we've spoken about before in terms of the order of things, and it not mattering so much who changes first, as long as you're getting the responses and the detail of both sides of the interaction, that sort of thing. Yeah,
absolutely.
Great. Well, thanks for sharing that. We want to let people know about our next catch-up event, don't we? So for those who don't know, we run bi-monthly free catch-up events, which is a chance in a friendly environment to share some solution-focused ideas, to try out some solution-focused questions, discuss things together with a great bunch of people. And the next one is going to be on Monday, the 25th of April, 8 p.m. UK time. We'll put the link for that in the information below this video. And all you need to do is just sign up through Eventbrite. And yeah, really looking forward to that one, and hope to see you guys there. All right, take care and have a great week.